Iran on the brink of total collapse. President Pezeshkian's desperate plea for two lights only as the Islamic Republic begs its people to sit in darkness. The regime's 47-year resistance myth shatters in late April 2026. Listen up, brothers and sisters of the free world, and especially the brave souls still trapped inside Iran now. Is the moment to stand tall and refuse to be indifferent. The time has come to rise up and overthrow this crumbling Islamic Republic once and for all. Long live the Shah of Iran. Long live the proud Persian people who have suffered too long under this hateful theocracy. Iran is finally giving up, and no amount of hollow resistance rhetoric from Tehran's mullahs can hide the total collapse anymore. For decades, they dodged sanctions, slithered through proxy wars, and pierced every attempt at isolation with smug defiance. That so-called resilience was their ultimate trump card against the civilized world. But that card has now been ripped from their blood-stained hands and tossed into the dustbin of history. On April 25, 2026, President Masoud Pezeshkian appeared on national television with a face pale as death and a voice cracking under the weight of desperation. He openly admitted the catastrophic energy crisis strangling his nation and begged ordinary Iranians to accept living in literal darkness just to keep the regime's dying lights flickering a little longer. Right now, we don't need the sacrifices of these loved ones, he pleaded. His words dripping with the kind of cynical manipulation that has defined this regime's hatred for its own people. But we need to control consumption. What's wrong with turning on 2 lights at home instead of 10? 2 lights. That's what the supreme leaders of the so-called Islamic Republic, the same men who once promised paradise on earth while building palaces of corruption, are now demanding from families already pushed to the breaking point. The darkness isn't confined to living rooms anymore. Major dams have dried up to less than 10% capacity. Grocery shelves stand empty for days at a stretch. Factories have slammed their gates shut. Ports have ground to a halt. And entire cities teeter on the edge of total disintegration. The Tehran regime is literally begging its citizens for more sacrifice, more hunger, more blackouts, more despair, simply to delay the inevitable collapse by a few more agonizing weeks. To truly grasp the shocking depth of Pezeshkian's humiliating television plea, we must first examine exactly how the Islamic Republic reached this apocalyptic point in late April 2026. The answer lies in 2 brutal, intertwined realities that expose the regime's decades of hatred-fueled mismanagement. A merciless blockade imposed from outside by a resolute United States and its allies, and a self-inflicted internal collapse that the mullahs have accelerated through corruption, incompetence, and sheer contempt for their own population. For years, the Iranian regime weaponized the Strait of Hormuz like a loaded gun pointed at the world's face. They threatened to slam the strait shut, choking off a quarter of global oil supplies and holding the planet hostage to their nuclear ambitions and proxy terror networks. That threat worked, until it didn't. In a stunning reversal that has sent shockwaves through the region, the United States upended the entire calculation. By late March 2026, Washington deployed an unprecedented naval armada to the Persian Gulf. Multiple carrier strike groups, advanced destroyers, and submarines positioned with surgical precision. When the regime attempted its usual provocations, speedboat swarms, mine-laying operations, and missile feints, the U.S. Navy responded with overwhelming calculated force. Iranian naval assets were neutralized in lightning strikes that left burning hulks drifting in the waters. Ports were effectively sealed. The very waterway Tehran once brandished as a weapon was now wrapped tightly around the regime's own throat like a noose. The hatred between the two sides boiled over in real time. Iranian state media spewed venomous threats of total war and crushing the great Satan, while American commanders publicly declared they would not tolerate any disruption to global energy flows. The result, Iran's maritime trade was decapitated overnight. Grain shipments, cooking oil tankers, life-saving medicines, and critical spare parts, everything the country desperately needed, stopped cold. Food imports, which formed the backbone of the regime's fragile supply chain, were slashed by more than 70%. The regime that loved to chant death to America now found itself staring at empty storehouses and starving citizens. Yet the external blockade, devastating as it was, only accelerated a tragedy that was already unfolding from within. Iran's internal infrastructure had been rotting for years under a toxic brew of drought regime corruption and the so-called water mafia, a network of illegal wells, crony-controlled irrigation schemes, and politically connected dam projects that prioritized regime loyalists over the public good. Major reservoirs like the Lardon, once the lifeblood of Tehran, had plummeted to less than a tenth of capacity by early 2026. The capital began whispering about day zero, the terrifying moment when taps would run completely dry. Hydroelectric output, which normally supplied a massive share of the nation's power, was cut in half. When U.S.-Israeli precision strikes in the 2026 operation hammered the massive South Pars gas field, the crown jewel of Iran's energy sector, and shredded key pipeline networks, even gas-fired thermal plants were crippled. The regime scrambled to fire up diesel generators, but the blockade had already choked off fuel imports. Every desperate fix collided with another layer of collapse, creating a vicious, self-reinforcing death spiral that no amount of propaganda could disguise. In chilling detail, the 2025 12-day war and the follow-on 2026 operation laid bare the regime's military vulnerability and the deep hatred driving both sides. During the intense 2025 conflict, Israeli F-35s and American B-2 stealth bombers executed coordinated nighttime raids that turned Iranian nuclear sites at Natanz and Fordow into smoking craters. Iranian air defenses, already degraded by years of sanctions, managed only sporadic, ineffective responses, launching waves of drones and ballistic missiles that were largely intercepted by U.S. and allied systems. Casualties on the regime side climbed into the thousands, with entire command bunkers vaporized and key scientists reportedly killed in the chaos. The regime retaliated with proxy attacks through Hezbollah and the Houthis, firing hundreds of rockets at shipping and Israeli targets in a frenzy of hatred-fueled vengeance. But the damage to Iran's own energy heartland was catastrophic. South Pars production plunged by 60%, pipelines ruptured, and flames lit up the night sky for days. Then came the 2026 operation in early April. U.S. naval forces, backed by Israeli intelligence, struck again, this time targeting not only remaining nuclear infrastructure, but also regime command centers and additional gas facilities. Iranian speedboats attempted suicide runs against American warships. Most were destroyed by deck-mounted guns and helicopter gunships in dramatic high seas confrontations broadcast across global media. Mines laid in the strait were methodically cleared by U.S. minesweepers under cover of darkness. The hatred was visceral. Tehran state television broadcast images of charred American flags while promising hellfire, yet on the ground Iranian forces were left reeling, their radar systems starved of power and their missile batteries unable to recharge. These battles didn't just damage hardware. They shattered the regime's aura of invincibility and exposed the seething resentment ordinary Iranians felt toward leaders who dragged the nation into such ruinous conflict. By late April 2026, the consequences were everywhere. Pezeshkian's own words on April 25th confirmed the nightmare. While no nationwide blackout had yet occurred, planned rolling outages left homes with only 4 to 8 hours of electricity daily. Ports suffered first and worst. Shahid Rajai, handling 85% of Iran's container traffic, saw operations plummet by 40 to 60%. Electric cranes stood idle, refrigerated warehouses warmed and spoiled, and night lighting vanished. Tens of thousands of port workers watched their shifts evaporate. Thousands were furloughed without pay, in scenes of raw desperation. Truck drivers, all 365,000 registered across the country, faced routes extended by 20 to 40% or outright canceled. Fuel pumps powered by electricity left them idling in endless lines during outages. The cold chain for perishable goods shattered. Tons of food rotted on highways while families went hungry. The Moar Steel Complex in Isfahan, Iran's industrial backbone, shut down completely after the strikes, sending tens of thousands of workers home and threatening cascading layoffs that could engulf 10 to 12 million souls. Even the regime's cleverest sanctions evasion scheme collapsed. Bitcoin mining farms, which had secretly consumed nearly 2,000 megawatts of stolen electricity and generated billions in annual revenue, were forced offline by the power shortages. The $7.8 billion crypto lifeline that had funded proxy wars and regime luxuries vanished almost overnight. Ordinary Iranians paid the heaviest price. Inflation rocketed past 105%. Food prices surged 72% in a single year. Water outages stretched 12 to 18 hours daily. Families huddled by candlelight, food spoiled in silent refrigerators, and clean water pumps failed. Street crime spiked as lighting disappeared. Women and children suffered most acutely. Schools shifted to remote learning that became impossible without power. This nightmare didn't erupt overnight. Chronic problems had simmered for years, 40 to 50% inflation, before the latest war, eroding wages and rising food costs. The hardest hit groups, port workers, truckers, steel fabricators, had already endured the 2025 port explosion that killed dozens through regime negligence. The massive 2025 trucker strike, involving all 365,000 drivers and spreading to 155 cities over insurance and fuel hikes, had already paralyzed supply lines and foreshadowed wider unrest. Energy workers and port employees fueled protests from late 2025 into early 2026. The regime responded with its usual hatred-fueled repression: thousands arrested, hundreds killed, internet blackouts, and IRGC patrols. Yet the war and blockade turned chronic grievances into an existential breaking point. By late April 2026, fresh reports emerged of spontaneous protests erupting in Bandar Abbas and Isfahan, where laid-off workers clashed with security forces in running street battles, captured on smuggled videos. The regime's propaganda machine tried to spin it as national sacrifice, but to the people it meant official approval of poverty, darkness, and starvation. The anger is ancient, but now it is volcanic. And the deepest wound isn't even on the battlefield. It's the human hemorrhage flowing out of Iran's borders. Internal displacement has already hit 3.2 million, and the numbers are exploding. Port workers, truck drivers, and factory hands, the very backbone of the economy, are fleeing en masse. Historical brain drain of 150,000 to 180,000 skilled professionals annually has accelerated into a full-scale exodus. Analysts warn that continued blockade could produce a refugee wave rivaling Syria's 2015 crisis, but on a scale 4 times larger given Iran's population. In the last week of April alone, Turkish border authorities reported average daily crossings spiking to 1,300 with skilled engineers. Doctors and technicians streaming toward Europe. Germany, the top choice for 28% of them. Turkey now shelters roughly 100,000 Iranians and is scrambling to reinforce borders. Yet economic desperation overwhelms controls. The demographic cost is incalculable. Loss of the young and educated 15 to 35 age group accelerates aging and makes recovery impossible for decades. Every departing technician means another unrepaired dam, every fleeing doctor, another closed clinic, every missing engineer, another silent factory. The regime can jail protesters, but it cannot force exiles to return. Total economic contraction from war-damaged blockade and internal rot could reach 5 to 10%, a silent, creeping, irreversible death sentence. While Iran implodes internally, external help has evaporated. Peace talks in Islamabad collapsed spectacularly in mid-April 2026. Trump's envoys, including high-profile figures, canceled an 18-hour flight after the Iranian side refused to budge on nuclear and missile demands. The conditions are ours, you call us. The message was crystal clear. The Iranian delegation flew home empty-handed, still chanting about red lines that grow more meaningless with every passing blackout. Leadership chaos compounds the disaster. Following the assassination of key figure Karman, widely understood as a reference to high-level regime instability, his son Mojtaba's ascent has ignited vicious power struggles between the IRGC hardliners and the political wing. Coordination has shattered. Iran's once feared resistance axis lies in ruins. Hezbollah and the Houthis fight alone. Their supply lines severed, their coordination with Tehran reduced to desperate radio pleas. Allies offer empty words at best. China, Iran's largest oil customer, watches its own economy bleed, but refuses to confront Washington directly, quietly shifting to Russian supplies instead. Russia sells a few weapons at inflated prices but prioritizes its own war in Ukraine. No genuine savior steps forward, not even the pariah states. Iran's nuclear program, once its ultimate blackmail card, is now a smoking ruin. Facilities damaged in the 2025 war remain crippled. The blockade prevents replacement parts. The regime still dreams of a bomb as a deterrent, but time and resources have run out. U.S. warnings remain ironclad. Crossing that red line invites consequences too terrible to contemplate. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Turkey quietly review their own nuclear options, raising the specter of regional proliferation. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' conventional forces are paralyzed. Air defenses gutted in 2025. Command centers hit in 2026. Radar systems starved of electricity. The once proud military machine is reduced to asymmetric pinpricks that grow weaker by the day. Iran has never stood so utterly alone, collapsing from within, strangled from without its people, fleeing its allies, watching from the sidelines. For 47 long years, the regime told the world, "You cannot destroy us." It bypassed sanctions, survived wars, pierced isolation. Yet on April 25, 2026, its own president went on television and asked the nation to sit in the dark while dams dried, shelves emptied, factories died, ports stopped, and citizens streamed across borders. Allies offered no lifeline. The people's capacity for sacrifice is finally exhausted. Every engineer who boards a plane, every factory that goes silent, every shelf that stays empty rips another piece from Iran's future. The regime's 47-year resistance fairy tale has collided with a single devastating truth. A government that begs its people to live by 2 light bulbs is not resisting, it is surrendering. But let's pause right here, viewers. What do you think? Has the Islamic Republic finally reached the point of no return? Or can the mullahs somehow conjure one more miracle from the ashes of their own failures? Are the brave truck drivers, port workers, and ordinary mothers and fathers in the streets the spark that will finally topple this hated regime? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and your voices matter more than ever in these historic days. Do you believe the time has truly come to restore the glory of a free Iran under the banner of the Shah? Tell us. We want to hear your unfiltered take. The regime's only remaining card, the forced sacrifice of its own exhausted population, is rapidly running out. Every passing day in late April 2026 brings fewer resources, fewer loyalists, and less time. The hatred the mullahs have sown for decades is now reaping a whirlwind of their own making. So, do you believe the Iranian regime can possibly survive this multi-layered catastrophe? The naval blockade, the energy death spiral, the mass exodus, the internal power struggles, and the complete abandonment by former allies? Or will President Pezeshkian's humiliating 2 lights plea go down in history as the final pathetic gasp of a dying theocracy? Share your honest thoughts in the comments right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a single update from PPR Global's hard-hitting analyses that cut through the propaganda. Our video may end here, but the fight for truth and freedom never stops. If you want to stay fully informed during your daily commute workout or quiet evenings, dive into PPR Global's detailed podcast series on Spotify. Follow our account today via the link in the description and stay ahead of the global agenda no matter where you are. Thank you for standing with us in this critical moment. The eyes of the world are on Iran, and the people's moment of reckoning may be closer than the regime dares to admit.